Welcome. We'll get started shortly. Before we begin, here's how to earn continuing professional education credit for attending this session. There are no polling questions or attendance checks. Instead, you will demonstrate your knowledge by taking a brief multiple-choice quiz using the Earmark app. Visit earmark.app in your web browser. You can also download the mobile app by scanning the QR code on the screen. Log in, or if you're new, create your free account. Be sure to use a valid email address because that's where we'll send your course completion certificates. From the home screen, scroll down to find the course. You can also tap the magnifying glass icon to search for the course. Tap on the course artwork, then the Enroll button. On the Course tab, you'll find the recording and quiz questions. Complete the quiz to earn your CPE certificate. It takes us a few days to create the course on the app, so if you are attending this session live, please wait a few days. We'll email you a link to the course when it is ready. If you have questions or need help, email us at support@earmarkcpe.com. And now, on to the event. Buckle up, accountants. It's time for another Earmark Expo where we are taking the latest accounting tech for a test drive. Here's how it's going to work. We're going to floor it with a game-changing app, a live demo. David and I are going to be in the driver's seat, putting this app through its paces and asking the tough questions every accountant wants to know the answers to, and you're along for the ride. We want you, our live audience, to help us navigate. Ask your own questions in the chat, and we will highlight them for the Tabs team to answer. This is your chance to see cutting-edge accounting tech in action, get your questions answered in real time, and gain insights that could transform your practice. So, without further ado, let's roll with today's Earmark Expo.
So Blake, we've seen many apps that do RevRec, but many treat it more like an afterthought, or the way to think about it is more of a RevRec reporting app. But today's app Tabs is attacking RevRec a little bit differently. Yes, it can do RevRec, but what sets it apart, which interests me, it has the full cycle of invoicing, receivables, payments all in one system. And I want to see it in person because the more I look at the website, I could see this being the tool you use to run your company. And then it would just talk to the GL instead of like a lot of people try to run everything in the GL, where you'd really run it all in Tabs and then it would just talk to the GL as needed. But all the work you would need to do in your company with receivables, payments, contracts, you do right inside of RightRev instead of 5 apps that add on to your GL. You just use Tabs instead.
All right. Well, we've got Caitlin and Ali here. Ali, CEO and founder of Tabs. Caitlin, head of partnerships at Tabs. Great to have you with us. I'll start with you, Ali. What was your inspiration for starting Tabs?
Hey, Blake. Hey, David. So great to be here today. I mean, David nailed it. I mean, we're all operators. We've all run companies, been in the GL, and generally have seen a pattern the last 5 or 7 years. I wish I came up with this pattern myself, but David, to your point, putting the revenue side to the side for a sec, I think a lot of us in the GL saw other parts of the finance mind move to automation platforms. And so we as a company were highly influenced by peer companies in the payroll and benefits space and in AP spend and procurement, where we've seen a lot of consolidation of these horizontal platforms. And so for many of our users or viewers today, I think a lot of folks have seen what Rippling did in the category and said, look, like we're going to move from a bunch of point solutions around finance managing HRIS workflows to a more horizontal workflow. And we saw something very similar happen in the AP and spend space. And there was this existential question of why is there so much both human capital, services, and point solutions involved in all things revenue. And that was kind of the main mandate that got myself, a great team, Caitlin on the call today, and many others to kind of try to figure out why had revenue generally been left behind to a bunch of like more expensive upmarket RevRec or billing tools, but the vast majority of finance teams doing this manually versus where they've adopted a lot of automation and the other sides of the finance stack. So I think you're spot on. Hopefully, Blake, that answers your question, but David, you're spot on where a lot of this is now moving off the GL. The GL is too big to fail, like QuickBooks, NetSuite. The same way no one gets fired for using IBM. No one should have any tummy rumble on NetSuite or QuickBooks, but the workflows are moving to more modern platforms.
Got it. Yeah, it seems like we have so much focus on spend and expenses and controlling spend, but we don't give the same attention to revenue. a lot of times in the small business space, we just stick it all in one line on the P&L, and there's no detail, there's no understanding of it. And it seems like that is also the case for larger businesses as well. So I'm really eager to see the platform today. Caitlin, welcome.
Thank you. Hey, Blake. Hey, David. Thanks for welcoming us.
All right. Well, where should we start? What should we look at first?
Happy to jump straight into the Tabs platform if that works for everyone.
Yeah, it works great.
I think it works well. One thing while Caitlin's guiding us to the platform, Blake and David, I think it's helpful to talk about why revenue's been kind of forgotten. And a couple of thoughts. Just one is obviously macro cycles, last 5 or 7 years as folks moved to automation platforms off the GL. They had huge balance sheets, capital was cheaper, and there was this huge rush to be like, okay, how do I manage a lot of my spend given I'm deploying a lot of dry powder? I think we saw a reset in 2022. I think more importantly, and you'll see this a little bit with why now for Tabs, and we've been one of the privileged companies to come out of the world of AI, is that revenue is just a very complex discipline from a data standpoint, meaning with AP or with payroll, the data that drives the software is very simple or very finite in time, whereas revenue has a ton of complexity, not only at a customer level, but a customer's customer level, meaning the billing terms change constantly with amendments or renewals. We're also seeing a ton of changes with usage as a key component of invoice calculation and revenue recognition. And so a lot of why we got together in 2023 and not 2018 was the technologies needed to actually do automation independent of custom services work and humans translating data from contracts and POs was the advent of AI. And I think where you will see some of the really cool innovation today in the demo is the fact that in 2023, we started to see AI hit a turning point where that could actually replace a lot of translation and custom services work from Salesforce and HubSpot to actually bring automation in a way where it could be accessible to the masses, like Rippling and Ramp did for a lot of products that otherwise would have been very upmarket to Coupa or systems like ADP that were huge services change management exercise.
Somebody attending brought up a good point, and if you really contrast this, the accounting department owns payroll, the accounting department owns the bill pay, right? The accounting department owns those things, but revenue became a function of the marketing department or growth teams, right? And so that really is a good point on why maybe it hasn't been served because the accountants are not owning this function of the business the way, but they have to report on it, right?
I think it's a great point. And I think our distinction on revenue is there's parts of, like when you think about revenue lifecycle management, there are parts of pre-closed one, the actual pipeline, the funnel, that is a marketing and sales exercise. Down to even CPQ, we don't believe finance is the direct owner. And therefore, that part of revenue, both in terms of responsibility, David, you're right, but also in terms of what we try to serve in Tabs, is outside of scope. Where we think finance becomes the key holder of responsibility is after that post-closed one, when a deal is actually signed. We actually think finance is a huge owner as well as fiduciary to that for several reasons. One is they have to constantly own the billing. Like in most finance functions, AR in collection still sits with finance as much as they want to toss it over to success and sales. The second is the actual rev rec, but there's a ton of reporting, to your point, David, from both GAAP metrics as well as non-GAAP metrics and board metrics that finance owns from a revenue standpoint that are incredibly difficult to get out of a GL system or an ERP without a finance leader playing CSI across many systems and translating it to Excel. And those are many of the things hopefully you'll see today in the demo that we are creating automation specifically for finance and all things revenue.
Great.
Love it.
Caitlin, are you
I
ready
think
to jump in?
I think before we jump into the demo, I just wanted to share a few more slides to contextualize Tabs and our approach to revenue automation. So, what you're seeing here is Tabs is that platform that unifies all your commercial data. So your customer contracts, your customer usage data, all into a single view and automates workflows directly from that downstream, including billing, payment, AR, rev rec, full suite reporting on a fully integrated system. and allows you, instead of working across a whole host of disparate systems, pulling different data sources in and having to figure out what the source of truth is, work across one application to complete your end-to-end workflow. And so for us, as we were building tabs, the key insight that we realized was, for B2B companies in particular, what really drives your billing schedule and your revenue schedule and your reporting sits in that commercial contract between you and your customer. So whether that's an MSA, a PO, a sales order, an amendment, or a renewal, there's so much rich information in those documents that no other player within the invoicing space was capturing. It was in fact all entered manually. Can we figure out a way to use all that data that sits within your company as you do business with your customers and drive workflows from that? So invoice creation, the payments, the rev rec, and reporting all stem from the contracts that we ingest and extract crucial data from. And then we also integrate with a host of platforms to power a single source of truth for all your customer data, financials, billing, and transactions. So bidirectional integrations with QuickBooks and NetSuite, so that your GL can remain that source of truth as you use tabs, but other integrations including with contracts management platforms, with BI tools, with CRM, with sales tax providers, to give you one seamless end-to-end experience on tabs. And with that context, I'm happy to pop into tabs and run through the demo. Great. So what you're seeing here is the tabs demo instance. We have humorously called it AR Heroes, but this is really your cockpit as a user to really understand your company's billing situation, the total value of bills outstanding, the total value of bills overdue. Will give you key customer relationship information. I think it's very important for finance and accounting teams to be customer oriented, because the revenue side of things is that one external facing workflow. You can get your documents into tabs by uploading it in tabs here, or you can auto forward any contract as they come in to our email, contractingest@tabsplatform.com. You can also integrate tabs with your CRM or your documents platform, and we will import your contracts that way. So as we process your contracts, we'll create customer records automatically for you. So every customer you're seeing listed below, this is, as a reminder, our demo instance. So you'll see they're named after different billing models, really to showcase how tabs can be flexible across a whole host of B2B billing models. We're not just for one industry or one revenue model. We service any business that is contracts based. So if I just pop into one customer, for example, just the top one, annual recurring SaaS company, first thing you'll see is customer record information, how long they've been a customer, when their term ends, remaining bills, total value already billed through tabs. We'll also show you revenue and cash information. The second section, titled Billing and Revenue, is where we'll show you the billing schedules and the revenue schedules and how we've pulled that out from your contracts that we've processed. So if I pop into products, first thing you'll see is the specific product you're charging for. If I click into that, we'll have very clean visuals on your billing schedule for that particular product, as well as the corresponding revenue schedule. And you'll see that we also summarize information for you, what the total contract value is, what the billing frequency is and the payment terms, and everything within tabs is flexible and editable.
I really like how you've got those two charts right there, where you've got the billing schedule, so I can very clearly see the invoices that are going out, and then I can see the revenue as it's been allocated in the different periods. It's very clear.
I love it. We're all about great UI. And so if I pop back to that same customer profile I was showing you, you'll see that we also automatically generate invoices for you. So all your invoices will be auto-generated by tabs. No one is going into tabs and manually typing in anything contract by contract to translate into invoices. I think this is a key workflow unlock that we provide for our customers. And then we also have, ability to edit those revenue schedules. So say you happen to be a milestones-based business. where you need to collect feedback from the field on whether a service has been completed, and you need to allocate revenue accordingly. There's no straight line proration to it. We allow easy ability to allocate revenue by your revenue schedule. Popping back to the customer record itself, the next thing you'll see is the tab's document repository. So any contract or commercial document associated with that customer will be organized here for you. We'll call out whether there's a billable item or not within that particular commercial document. We will also extract out directly from your documents key terms that are important to keep track of. What is your cancellation policy? Is there an auto charge? Is there a ramp-up schedule that you need to keep track of, or something specific on the sales tax side? And the key unlock for a lot of our customers on both of these features is, first and foremost, one consolidated place to keep track of your commercial terms. But more importantly, all your documents are already tied to your revenue schedules. Should you need to undergo an audit, exactly how your revenue policy is will already be tied back to that one document that drives that in the first place. Last piece is the renewal section. So for any recurring revenue business, so important to keep track of renewals, make sure that that workflow gets started on time, and that you are keeping track of exactly what's at stake. Are there price adjustments, number of years up for renewal? You want to be able to extend that customer lifetime value as far out as possible. So the next section within tabs is the billing section. So what you'll see here is across all your customers, not just for one, the historic and upcoming bills. You can filter by status. So maybe I want to come in and just work on everything in draft form, send all of them out in bulk so I don't have to worry about them anymore. Or you can work on everything in overdue, make sure you're following up and getting paid. The settings will allow you to configure what your invoices look like. So what is the contact email, the address, particular invoice start number you want to start using as you get up and running in tabs, as well as select your chart of accounts. You could have any document go out with all your invoices, for example, a W-9. And then we allow you to very easily configure what payment methods you accept versus don't accept. Do you want to allow credit cards, ACH debit, ACH credit, or check? Turn on and off whatever you wish to allow your customers to pay you with. Lastly, within settings is reminder emails. One of the most customer-facing, manual, and awkward workflows for any accountant or finance professional. Having to go in and manually send those emails out to remind customers to pay their bills. We automate this for you very, very seamlessly. You can customize your messaging. You can customize the cadence to which these emails go out. That all ties very well with our collections section. So this is a very simple view for anyone in charge of managing collections for the company to understand what sits across different statuses of collections and the specific invoices. So what is overdue, what's sent, what's pending, what's paid. This is also all automated for you. So there's minimal work to keep track of all this. So anytime you send out an invoice in tabs, we will post it within collections under sent, and we'll also highlight in how many days it's due. We know when bills become overdue, and we can have that populate accurately. And should you be paid by credit card or ACH debit, we will automate the movement from overdue to pending, and then finally paid once reconciled. So very easy way for you to collaborate internally and keep track of exactly what sits across collections. Next section is interesting. It's remittances. We have a lot of businesses that have either reseller agreements or rev share agreements. This is an easy workflow to remit those cuts out as you get paid by your own customers. The next few sections are going to be reporting sections. So first and foremost, we have our revenue section. So this will first show you very quick visuals on ARR or revenue by category, as well as ARR or revenue by customer. And most important for accountants is revenue recognition, especially if you're working with companies that need to recognize revenue in a crude fashion. So what you'll see here is by customer, the revenue to be recognized in each period. We also break out for you whether that revenue is deferred or unbilled, and then how that also breaks out by category to your choosing. We'll show you 12 months prior and 12 months upcoming. Back in the revenue section, we also have an ARR report. Easy way for any recurring revenue business to keep track of that. And you can see how that breaks down by the categories that you've set. Last thing for any accountant, the month-end close process is one of the more time-consuming processes, and we want to be able to help streamline that entire process so that you're not spending hours closing the books, especially on the revenue side where tabs can support you. So we have month-end close journal entry exports that we create in an automated way. It is as simple as popping it into QuickBooks or into NetSuite to then facilitate with the close process. Next few reports include the aging report. So this report will show you very cleanly across each customer the number of days overdue a certain invoice or a certain number of invoices are. And then we also have days to pay, which will show you the average number of days it takes any customer to pay you. That is tied with the cash forecast because, by default, our cash forecast is done by invoice due date, but we can feed in days to pay information to help you gain a much more realistic understanding of your company's cash forecast based on customer behavior. But the cash forecast is so important for any CFO, controller, CEO to have a very, very accurate grasp of.
Which
few
I think
other
is
reports
easy for you to do because you guys have the revenue data that's coming in.
Exactly. Revenue data connected to your GL. We know, exactly when the invoice due dates are, exactly what your customer historic payment behavior has been. And so Tabs is just consolidating a ton of really rich data, not just from customer contracts, but as you use Tabs, you accumulate a lot of this important information that can help you make, of course, the cash forecast more accurate, but also proactively glean insights for running your business. And then we also have a renewals section. So any recurring revenue business renewals is going to be vital. I'll just wait for this to load. And I think what's particularly unique about Tabs is that we have this consolidated view for any of those businesses to keep track across all your customers when the contract ends, the notify by period, essentially when you need to start that workflow, the type of renewal written into the contract, as well as the estimated value upon renewal, including any price escalators. I think one of the bigger pain points for an accounting team as a company scales is preventing revenue leakage, or at least keeping track of all the terms upon renewal so that you mitigate that risk, right? But there hasn't been a software or easy way to keep track of all that, especially as your company scales. And Tabs does that very, very
Blake just
clearly.
had me manually do this about 2 weeks ago. Line by line,
So
I had to go do it.
Sounds like you guys should get on Tabs.
So maybe we should. So what we're talking about here is we've built into our contract, maybe some of them automatic price increases. And often if the invoice is just set up like a recurring invoice in the accounting system, that doesn't get applied. Maybe the increase doesn't get applied from the contract, and then we're missing out on that revenue. And that compounds over time and can become a serious shortfall.
Yep, exactly. And so, before you know it, you've grown to a multi-million-dollar business, but you're not charging those escalator fees and leaving money on the table. The last report is our ARR waterfall. So for any recurring revenue business, very important to keep track of. This is vital for board level reporting. What you'll see here is start of period ARR, any new expansion, contraction, or churned ARR. And we will show you how that breaks down by customer, by period, and how that ends up rolling up into net dollar retention. You can, of course, adjust the period to which you're seeing all this data. You can, if you have specific categories of ARR that should not, or revenue that should not be considered ARR, you can exclude all of that. So it's a very clean view for your company.
And churn are basically the invoices or contracts that are not renewed.
Exactly. Yep. And then the last couple, I guess I didn't touch on usage. So what's so powerful about tabs is we're not just taking your customer contracts. If you happen to be a business with a variable business model, say you are an accounting firm charging by the hour, or you are a software company charging by number of seats, or number of API calls, however you want to do business, we allow for very easy data imports into tabs of usage by your customers. And we already have the customer record information with the rate set out by customer to then map that usage data within the billing periods against the rate set out to then create those bills automatically for you. So you're never having to do those calculations, price times quantity on your own. We're doing that all for you.
So I have an export from like my app, like if I'm a SaaS company with the usage,
Yep.
I upload that and then you generate the invoices based on the usage.
Exactly. Yep. Or, you could even integrate in some way your BI tool with tabs, but most accountants they already have a running spreadsheet, but they're doing a lot of work in that spreadsheet rather than do the entire process from getting the metered information to tabulating that and organizing that by customer to then figuring out how to invoice for it. We streamline that entire workflow. Like however you are getting that raw information into spreadsheets, just pop it into tabs, and we will then map that against the rate set out in your contracts and create those bills automatically. Last section is just key integrations that we have. So I talked about QuickBooks and NetSuite as our core GL integrations. We also have an easy connection to Stripe, to Avalara and Earmark on the sales tax side. And then I also talked about CRM and documents integrations. So all of this is in the name of making your experience on tabs very seamless and getting the right data onto our platform to assist with your workflow.
And majority of tabs is based for B2B businesses. So like many B2B
That
businesses,
is correct.
like ourselves, we have two entities. And sometimes we have one customer doing business with both our entities. So can you support a multi-entity type scenario?
We can support multi-entity, we can support multi-currency.
Okay. Can you bridge in? Oh, go ahead, Blake.
I was going to ask, unless there's more you want to show us, Caitlin, I was curious, like what the revenue models are that you support out of the box, because we saw straight line there. Like, that's an easy one.
Yep.
What other types of revenue models are built into tabs?
Yeah, honestly, anything under the sun, as long as there's a contract in place. So, we have several hardware software businesses. We have businesses with a combination of annual recurring SaaS, milestones, and usage, probably the most complex model under the sun.
Could we see that? Like, what if you click into that? I'm curious what that looks like.
So first, if I jump into items and pricing, this is where we've extracted out from your contract the items or services that you're charging for, their associated price, the structure to which you're charging for that. Is it just flat fee per month? Is there some trigger like hours or contracts? How you've categorized those items, the period on the contract for that particular item or service, as well as the associated payment terms. And then that all then rolls up into different revenue schedules. Of course, if it's heavily usage-based, it'll be zero. We don't know. But if there's some semblance of, recurring, or, you may be milestones-based and you can allocate that yourself. So a lot of that is very manual today, but we want to create a easy interface for you to allocate revenue as you get service completion intel from, someone from your company.
Could you go back to that previous screen? So if you scroll down, we've got the different items here, and I just want to highlight, we've got so many possibilities here, right? Email volume, we've got account management on an hourly basis, up to a certain number of hours of support, up to so many contracts, up to, it's like you could have a very, very complex contract.
100%.
Super complex.
You're onto something really interesting, which is like, if there's one message the audience leaves with today, is like, we mentioned earlier, like we're the first AI native platform in the category, and like this is that power. This is the insight because we're completely agnostic to price books and CPQ. Like the reality is B2B is messy and it's complex, and a lot of controllers and CFOs and finance teams feel like they're gunning icy at 7-Eleven. Like it's such a brain freeze to try to translate these terms into both AR and RevRec operations. And like we have, I think, found one of the more useful ways to take these new technologies and completely give you a agnostic tool to address your business needs. And I think this page is a great example of like how we can translate very complex customer agreements into, I mean, a very simplified way to operationalize these things.
Yeah, I mean, any complexity, we are ready to help support. So maybe I'll jump into another example. You know, a lot of software businesses are now coming out with usage-based models that may be particularly complex, and we're fully able to support that. You might have step-tier pricing where up to a certain point, it's this dollar amount up, you know, the next, almost like how we're taxed today. That's a very common new revenue model for software business in particular, but could even be applied for services businesses.
So in this example, up to 100 widgets, it's $250 per unit. And then from 101 to 500, it goes down to 193. And then above that, 501 to 1,000, we get 175. So you could, so basically this gives me the framework then as the accounting team to then go and find out how many widgets the customer used or whatever it is, get that data into tabs. And then as long as I have those inputs, tabs will do all the calculations and make sure the amounts are correct.
So there's never any calculation or manual work done on your side. As long as you've got that raw data, we can ingest that similar to a contract and map that against the rates that we already have set out.
And how does that data get into tabs? You said, I think that you have like a template. So if I'm doing this in a spreadsheet, I could just align my spreadsheet to that template?
Exactly. Align, it's very simple template. You can upload CSV of that template during your billing period. You can also integrate your BI tool with tabs. However, most of our accountant customers prefer to take a look at the data before they actually put it into tabs.
Right. So that's cool because if I have my existing spreadsheet, which I undoubtedly already do because I'm not using a tool now, if I'm not using tabs, I can just line that up with the template and validate it, upload it.
Exactly. Yep.
Cool. Yeah. And what two findings, Blake, we had going deep in the space from a product perspective is the challenge in the market is otherwise without tabs, you either had to do it very much in spreadsheets or you had to go buy a metered billing tool, which we believe was overkill, meaning your finance team needed to go to the engineering team and custom tool an API into your cloud or database. And we don't think finance teams have the time nor the political will to pull that much engineering infrastructure. And so what we've taken is a more pragmatic approach and say, hey, you just tell us how you're getting your data from either product or Looker or your BI tool. No change necessary, because the same way we use a form of AI technology to ingest contracts, we can do the same thing on usage. The funny part is it's actually not the usage that's hard for finance to pull. Usually they have a peer in the company who can pull it from a data standpoint. It's the actual mapping to each contract, which is often negotiated at the contract level, that becomes this huge exercise in math that we're here to automate in B2B. Like a lot of B2C usage has been figured out. And like, I think a lot of those companies made a lot of sense, but B2B is where we see a lot of the usage trajectory really moving. And what we learned is it's actually not the usage that hard. It's the math against each customer agreement that has very bespoke terms, whether it's tiers, overages, pure usage, that we can kind of understand and structure at the customer level and help you deploy and become the function of yes, as long as it's a good deal with your sales team, versus being like, hey, that's cool that Verizon wants to sign that, but we have no way to do it in our GL. Like, we just can't do the deal. And like finance really becomes a strategic function of yes to help support revenue growth.
And it's generally not going to be a problem to ask the engineering team, the product team, to give me a data dump in a
Yeah,
spreadsheet.
as long as it's a
That's-
raw file. If you ask them to do an
Yeah.
API and a bunch of tooling into a system, it becomes a huge, it often gets escalated to the CE level. Why is the CFO asking for 2 engineers from product? But if you just say, hey, product, the same way you're pulling it today, just CSV me that. I will meet you where your data is today. We can be very conducive to just working with that.
We're never going to get away from spreadsheets, are we?
For better, for worse. I love.
Right.
Go
It makes
for it,
sense though, right? Because it is it's tried and tested, tried and true, and it works. And so I like this approach because you're not, like you said, Ali, you're not having to pull resources to go build some sort of custom API integration that then has to be maintained. Let's not forget about the cost of that.
Yep. 100%. The average usage model pre-tabs in another metering tool would take 6 to 9 months to just go live. We can do it in 6 to 9 days. And like, that's not in all cases. Obviously there's some areas where there's other delays, but like we're bringing down with platforms like this, we can bring down implementation time to basic onboarding versus a massive like digital transformation.
So I'm curious to know, unless there's more product you want to show, Caitlin, I'm really curious, like what are examples of companies that are using tabs? I know you said it's B2B. What does that mean? Tell me more.
Yeah, I can take that one. I think what we're proud of is just the diversity of B2B companies. Like we've generally gone after the QuickBooks NetSuite ecosystem. So it's a ton of late SMB mid-market companies tend to be several million in revenue to start just because you have enough pain to need a solution. Like if you're sub $1 million, if you're only invoicing once a month, like maybe not for you, but once you hit that point of like, hey, I need a person to do this, tends to be a great entry point. And then we tend to support companies in the hundreds of millions in revenue. And that tends to be a good way to enter tabs and scale with tabs and do more with less. In terms of actual segment, like because of that AI ingest, we're actually very agnostic. I think naturally we see a lot of technology companies, professional service companies, but we're seeing a good amount of folks in healthcare and manufacturing, other folks who are B2B contract, purchase order, sales order based, but don't want to put a huge services team or a huge billing department or accounting department to do this. So I think it's more just the persona. I think a lot of finance teams, especially with the accounting shortages, are saying, look, though I am selfless in terms of building the biggest team, I still have a ton of fiduciary obligations around RevRec, board reporting, and collecting cash. And therefore, I do need to invest in technology. And I want to stay on QuickBooks to 50 million in revenue, but I can't do it without a tabs and a ramp or a tabs and a Tipalti to give me the automation and insight I need to scale. And that's like, I'd say it's more persona based of like, that are growing. Like we've been fortunate, most of the major like venture rounds, a lot of those rounds, like those CFOs will be the first call from them or their venture firm. A lot of private equity are calling us as they're trying to keep their data organized in a very simple way. And obviously Caitlin and a lot of the client and advisory services, many of the folks that adopted tools like Bill.com are now coming to us on the revenue side and saying, hey, like this really helped us on AP and spend. Come like give me something that lets me do more for my practice and do revenue, which even in the client and advisory side, revenue has been like the Voldemort, meaning, oh, I don't want to touch sales documents and I don't want to interact with my clients' customers. But with a tool like Tabs, you can actually kind of step in and like provide a new revenue and service opportunity to your clients. And that's like the good mix which keeps us so optimistic around the overall opportunity.
Is it possible for you? I know that you said that you can accept payments right through tabs. People can pay for your invoices, but it feels like on the website it refers to it as a portal. Can you show what that looks like from a customer perspective when they?
Yeah, for sure. So it's called the Tabs Customer Payment Portal, and it is linked to every invoice. So how I'll show that is I'll just download a sample invoice, open that up. And on this is a hypothetical Tabs invoice coming out of our demo instance. Every invoice, you'll have the payment portal linked. So if I click on that, it'll take you to the Tabs customer payment portal. And bear in mind, what a customer is allowed to pay with is dependent on how you've set up your payment settings within tabs. So I don't know if folks recall, but the demo instance payment settings had the max credit card threshold at $10,000, after which it's disabled. And so customers can instead come in here and pay their bills via, connecting their bank account. If they choose to continue paying via check or wire, they can of course do that as they had prior to their vendor coming on tabs. But the customer payment portal makes it very easy for any customer to come in, pay their bill via credit card or ACH debit. And that actually automates cash application.
Makes sense. Can they see all the invoices they have with us and the contracts and all that here?
It can be, David. That's rolling out in the coming quarters, like in terms of multi-invoice. Right now, we've focused really on ease of payment and also information like the W-9, but those are areas where we're continuously gathering feedback to figure out, especially one of the things we've tried to do is keep the portal without a password protection. And so we have to be thoughtful about what data we provide very easily, but that is a great area of feedback of areas we can continue to improve.
Yeah, because I feel like that's a question I get a lot, with B2B sales, is somebody else now took over that part and what are we doing with you? And they have no way of seeing it. Yeah.
100%. And there's the invoice component. So we're unlike a lot of the GLs, we can allow you to send invoices to multi parties at a client, but also communicate in Slack if that client is going undelivered to get intel from customer success or sales on who's the right billing contact. And then the third is we can quickly also submit there's a lot of AP portals out there with Coupa and Tipalti and Stamply and others. Like we can help communicate with also non-humans on the other side, where you often get pulled into a AP portal and need to register and provide specific documentation.
Great.
How about automatic billing? Do you support saving the customer's payment information and just charging them every month?
100%. So we're allowed. Our belief is that our number one goal is to help you save time and collect faster. And so when there are opportunities to auto charge, we have a ton of tooling built in where you can assign that at the customer level so that you're not auto charging everyone and making everyone upset. But to the degree you can set rules and align on auto charge everywhere possible.
Can you split on a contract? So some of the fees may be like set every month and then some are variable.
We can deal with split billable items, also different terms. Sometimes it's net pay upon invoice, net 30, net 45. I saw net 16 the other day. Like we're completely malleable. So not only just on the billing terms, but the operations around it.
And then what about like journal entries? How do those get into the accounting system?
Yeah, so I'd shown our month-end close journal entry export section within the revenue section. These are created, every day as long as you have activity within tabs. You can filter for the specific period you want to have imported into your GL. Today, it is a export CSV, easy pop into a QuickBooks, for example. Shortly, we want to automate this process so you don't have to take that extra step to export and import. But this is already a huge workflow unlock for the accountants on our platform, where they don't have to keep track of these journal entries because we create them for them.
And apologies if this is too wonky, but I'm curious, like how does Tabs post the revenue from the invoices into the accounting system? So you're generating invoices in Tabs, right? Are those copied over into QuickBooks or into NetSuite, or are they living in Tabs? They are. Okay.
So they have to be sent. If it's in draft form and it's unsent, it'll just live in Tabs. As soon as you send it out, a copy will be created in your QuickBooks or NetSuite instance.
Okay. So then we are increasing AR and we're crediting a sales account.
Yep.
And then the journal entries are what defer the revenue.
Yep. Exactly.
According to the like worksheet in Tabs.
Yep, exactly. So you can map everything back to the right GL account within your QuickBooks instance.
Got it. So we just have to be really careful then that nobody is changing invoices in QuickBooks if we're using that. Because like what happens if they get out of sync? That always, worries me.
Yeah, so it's a bidirectional integration. So if you work out of QuickBooks for one particular invoice and you're connected to Tabs, it will reflect back in Tabs, that particular change. and vice versa. So we
Okay.
always want your GL to be your source of truth, regardless of what you're doing in tabs. God forbid in an audit, it's all messed up and you have to clean it all up. Like that's the worst case scenario. So
Right.
we want to make sure it is clean and remains that source of truth.
I'm just remembering back to when I had to maintain a RevRec spreadsheet in my public accounting days for a client. And if an invoice changed in the accounting system, but I didn't change it in my spreadsheet, then my RevRec would not tie out.
100%.
Yep.
And we go one further step. That's the cool part about automation software is you can do it bi-directionally. A spreadsheet's only the direction as good as the human, but bi-directional. But then what's also great is beyond some of the billing and invoicing workflows, all of the 606s map to the actual order form and contract. So you can also have that as a second leverage point within the audit. And we're already seeing many clients lean on tabs. We have access to auditors in tabs. So if they want to quickly come in and map billable and contract terms and all of that, all the performance obligations, they can trace it down to the customer level within tabs. So all things we have to continuously build a ton of tooling on, but the ultimate vision is that you start to get multi-parties that are acting and checking a lot of these things to not have to come back and say, hey, Blake, show me the backup to this spreadsheet. It's all in a single source of truth in tabs for all things revenue.
I'm going to throw another one at you.
Yeah.
What about mid-term contract changes?
Yeah.
So I've got a contract. I signed it like 2 months. My customer signed it a few months ago. Oh, and now they're coming back and they want to upgrade.
We see it all the time. And so one of the beauties is our system is we call it an evolution of the customer record. So often it starts with an MSA, there's a contract, there's a amendment, there's a side letter, there's a renewal. All of those get lost in sales emails and success emails and are becoming, especially with tools like Slack and Teams, like a bunch of back and forth that is untraceable. So our workflow works the same way as a lot of expense management does, where you forward a receipt when you go buy a lunch. This way you just forward the amendment or the renewal. We ingest it and adjust the customer record to the latest form that supersedes anything legacy. Not only do we adjust that then for your billing ops and your rev rec, but it reconciles back so you have the entire audit trail of that customer journey.
Fantastic.
And so your AI, good. Blake,
no, go for it, David. I was just going to say we had a question come in the chat.
Oh, let me ask this, then we can bring those in.
Okay.
Yes, in the chats. So your AI, after you scan the contract, your AI processes it to populate the customer and the terms and all that. How formal does that contract have to be? Like, could it be an email? Like, hey, we kind of have this. We're just back and forth.
It's basically any form of agreement between you and the client. And so obviously it's great. Our recommendation is to always have papered contracts, but often business reality is emails. I mean, I don't recommend it, but if you wrote it on a napkin or a piece of paper, like we can ingest that too, as long as it's AI can read better than humans can. And so today, the only constraint is we only support English. That's the main, that's our own constraint. We're not yet supporting any other languages today, but so long as it's in English on a contract, whether it's an email, even we've seen some client sales does stuff via text and they just have that codified. Again, I don't recommend it, but like contract is a euphemism for any form of communication between a customer and their client.
Well, that's great because often we do this. We will create an initial contract with a customer for our business, and that's formal. But then the contract says any changes can be communicated via email and authorized via email. So we could forward an email with a change
100%.
to tabs and have it reflect.
Just forward to contract ingest the same way you would a receipt in the modern spend management world. You do that in the revenue world, and we will deal with the rest and make sure QuickBooks is up to date and your customers are happy.
Starting to like this, David. All right. We've got a question from the chat. Would you like me to pull it up, David?
Yeah, there's two of them. I don't know which one you wanted to go to.
So this is about the cash forecast. And the question is, does this provide an actual versus forecast reporting on the cash forecast?
Exactly. So what we do is when you're in the period, we show what your forecast is and what's all the dollars you can collect and what is the actual in that period. So I use it. I use it for our own business, and it's great because you have your forecast and you have your actual, and then you know what your number is for the 13 weeks. And you can then prioritize based on the insight tabs gives you. So if you need to get to $300,000 and your forecast is 330, but you're at 280 and you've got a couple of days left, you know where to really drive the escalated dunning to hit your number. And so in some ways we are but not only showing you that data, we're showing you how to really operationalize it without going after every customer and reacting in the final days of a period.
And this is more of a comment than a question, but I feel like it's worth reading. Jakirian says, this would be great for grant accounting. I used to spend way too much time reading contracts to create invoices for various sponsors.
Yeah, Kent, we would love to speak with you and get your feedback. Completely agree. One of the things that I think is one of the tough parts of accounting is you spend so many hours as a non-lawyer trying to read these contracts and translate them. And there's so much key person risk because if you're out of the office or you're on leave or you get promoted, translating that, and we see this all the time in the client advisory side, becomes just incredibly difficult. And we're here to be that kind of middle layer. And it actually is a huge risk mitigant as well to just have this all codified in a single source of truth.
A follow-up question: how are post-invoice adjustments handled? Oh yeah, we did address that, but I think it might be worth addressing again.
I think three options. So one is obviously we get the agreements and we update it, whether it's an email, et cetera. That's always best practice to have some type of written form to kind of memorialize it. That said, there's business reality, something you get on a phone call, you agree to, and you got to change it and send the invoice right away. Everything is editable in the platform. So we will show the edit and it'll also flag which user at the company did it, if they have the rights to do it, so that no one can just go wild west and make a bunch of adjustments. And the best practice is you adjust it, you get your operations done, but you will always have reminders to say, hey, if you would like, you should back this up with paper so that you are auditable in the future.
Got it. So the situation is I sent the invoice, something is not quite right with the invoice, customer comes back, tells me, I make the adjustment in tabs. That is all recorded. There's an audit trail for all of that.
100%.
Great.
Use the word turnkey on the website. So I'm sold. I'm going to use tabs. What's my implementation look like? You use the word turnkey, but what does that really mean?
As fast as possible. Look, like our job is to provide high quality and speed, which is like the perfect middle ground. I think generally our aspiration is to be about 10x faster than the industry, meaning like if you were to go with a traditional billing module with a services firm into CPQ, if it takes you a year to do that, we'd like to get it down to a month and a half. But on average for a QBO user, we want to get you up and running in a single billing period. So less than a month, ideally 2 weeks. Often with more complex businesses, if you're doing 70 million in revenue in NetSuite, you probably want to check some things and test some things with us. And we generally recommend anywhere from 1 to 2 months to just make sure you're perfect. And that type of change management tends to be a lot more palpable than doing a 2-year transition into like a Zora or a massive billing kind of tool.
And how does tabs bill? Like what's the cost of this? How do I get charged?
Yeah. I'd say what we don't do is usage based. So we're not here to penalize you for growth. Our whole mantra is we want you to scale with less. And so unlike a lot of the peer companies that have been more usage type or take rate type businesses, we're not. We have simple flat pricing that we just like to understand your business to fully understand. And it's just flat SaaS. We do not charge for any services or any take rate. But that tends to be quite competitive relative to other kind of solutions and services out there.
And what does it cost me to get paid through the tabs payment options on my invoices?
Yeah. But if it's ACH, credit, wire, physical check, no transaction fee, we just reconcile off the bank feed. And in most B2B, in fact, our view is like 80 to 90% is flowing that way. On the credit card processing, we tend to partner with Stripe in most cases, and we let you negotiate your rate with that vendor and embed it into tabs. And so we're not in the business of taking a take rate in fintech. We're just here to support and distribute whatever way that you have found that to work in your past. Obviously, we have recommendations if you're entering that as a segment, but that's how we think about it.
So how do our viewers, our listeners, learn more about tabs and get signed up?
Caitlin,
A few ways. One, if you are a accountant at an accounting firm and you want to learn more about tabs for your clients, we have a partners page on tabs. It's right on our website under company. Fill out that form and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you are a company interested in tabs for your internal workflows, we have a book a demo link right on our platform. Very, very easy to find that. Fill that form out and we'll get back to you same day. Probably the easiest way. Yep.
And that URL is tabs.inc. And for the accountants, it's tabs.inc/partners/accounting and tabs.inc for all the others. Wonderful. Ali, Caitlin, thank you so much for taking the time to show us this. It's really exciting what you've built. Man, would have saved me so much time with one of my SaaS clients when I was in public accounting. Makes me want to go back into public a little bit. So thanks for joining us.
This has been an amazing conversation. I mean, our job is we've gotten to where we are with a ton of phenomenal finance and accounting minds. And our whole mantra is there's a lot still to build for sure. We're very excited and grateful for all the accountants and finance leaders that have helped us get to where we are. And hopefully listeners today can be a part of that journey. And our commitment is to provide really good partnership and velocity in product and service to build a lasting long-term relationship in the community.
If you need CPE, stay tuned for a quick message about how to do that with the Earmark app. You can earn up to 1 free continuing professional education credit for joining us today. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you around soon on another Earmark Expo. Today's event has ended. To earn CPE, go to earmark.app or scan the QR code on the screen. Then log in or create your free account. Search for the course by tapping on the magnifying glass icon on the home screen and then entering the name of this event. It takes a few days to make the course, so if you're attending this event live, keep an eye out for an email letting you know when the course is available. Pass the quiz to earn your CPE, then tap the button to email yourself a certificate. Stay tuned for more events from Earmark. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon.